Hello everybody, let's talk today about new article from Phillips O'Brien about how USA was joining with Russia and the importance of German elections that were held yesterday. First, the attempts by the USA to align itself even more closely with Russia accelerated. The USA has completely abandoned the position it took at the start of the war in line with Ukraine and its European allies, and has now hook, line, and sinker adopted the Russian view. And second, after CDU says EU victory in the German election, it does look, verbally at least, as if there will be some important changes in Europe's most important economic power, meaning Germany. If you listen to what Merz says, it was the sign of one era in European security policy ending and an entirely new one beginning. So first about the further aligning of USA and Russia. So the USA and Russia are now one on the causes of the Russian invasion. Do you remember when Putin was the bad guy and the decision to unleash this terrible war was the responsibility of the Russian state which he leads? That was back in the olden days, when the fact that Putin massed his armies on the Ukrainian border and then ordered them across the border was accepted in the USA and most of the world as indicating responsibility. And it was the overwhelming majority of the rest of the world. We have an UN resolution to demonstrate that Russia was considered the culprit. On 2nd March, the UN voted by 141 to 5 with 31 abstentions to condemn the Russian invasion and demand a Russian withdrawal. And here was how the UN reported it. Member states today overwhelmingly adopted a resolution demanding the Russian Federation immediately end its invasion of Ukraine and unconditionally withdraw all its military forces from that neighboring country. Deploring in the strongest terms its aggression against Ukraine in violation of the Charter of the United Nations, the Assembly also demanded the Russian Federation immediately and unconditionally reverse its 21st February decision related to the status of certain areas of Donetsk and Lugansk regions of Ukraine. The measure was adopted by a vote of 141 in favor to 5 against. Belarus, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, meaning North Korea, Eritrea, Russian Federation, and Syria, with 35 abstentions, a clear reaffirmation of the 193-member world body's commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, unity, and territorial integrity. The official position of the US government is now that this was wrong, that Russia was not to blame for the invasion, and indeed, it seems that no withdrawal should be expected. Indeed, the growing choir from within the Trump administration is that the US and NATO are the real culprits in this, for having the temerity to discuss having a democratic Ukraine make the sovereign decision to join the alliance, which, by the way, was never really going to happen. Meaning, decision to join the alliance should be approved unanimously by all the countries. So, for example, Putin could just block it with the help of Hungary anytime. And also United States was against it and Germany was against it. So there was no way Ukraine could become a NATO member. So this was just a bullshit point. There was no way for Ukraine to become a part of NATO. To show how deep the rot had set in on this vision, 2 more members of Trump administration came out and said just this yesterday. Ambassador Steven Witkoff, who seemed to be a key conduit to Putin, went to the underboss meeting in Riyadh and was gushing about how well he was getting along with the Russian dictator. He went on CNN and said exactly this. Here was his verbatim quote, just so you have it. The war didn't need to happen. It was provoked. It doesn't necessarily mean it was provoked by the Russians. There were all kinds of conversation back then about Ukraine joining NATO. That didn't need to happen. It basically became a threat to the Russians. Imaginary threat. Wittev at no point condemns Russia, but actually frames the war as a general tragedy that needs to end, with no mention of Russian withdrawal. Again, everybody says this, and any sane person can understand that war can end immediately if Russians withdraw their forces from Ukraine. There will be no war after that. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth spoke identically. He refused to ascribe any blame to Russia for starting the war, saying in response to a question on the subject that, fair to say, it's a very complicated situation. Hegseth had earlier prevaricated embarrassingly on the question, desperate to find a way not to blame Putin when clearly he knows the truth. He said that there was no need to get into characterization of we know who invaded who, we understand the stakes of this game. Standing here and saying you are good, you are bad, you are a dictator, you are not a dictator, you invaded, you didn't, it's not useful, it's not productive. Well, okay. Indeed, it was around this time that Hegseth called blaming Putin for Putin's invasion of Ukraine finger-pointing and pearl-clutching. Soon, I'm sure the US will start referring to the Russian invasion as a special military operation. This change, now they are not using the word war describing this aggression of Russian Federation against Ukraine. I mean, we have a war, full-scale war with millions of people fighting each other from both sides. At least 1 million is right now in the trenches, and they are still saying that it is conflict. I mean, conflict. What is this? This is war. This is full-scale war. This is the biggest war in European continent after World War II. These changes in style and substance are extraordinarily important. The US is not just abandoning Ukraine, it is abandoning all of Europe to align with Putin. It is why it's incredibly disingenuous for any Trump supporter to also say that they support Ukraine. Trump is now making the official position of the US government that Ukraine was not a victim and Russia was no aggressor when the latter invaded the former. Indeed, the US position seemed to be that it was the US and Europe through NATO that were the real culprits. Once again, where is John Mearsheimer screaming aloud endorsement of Trump? If you support Trump, this is what you are supporting. Live with it, accept it, and stop trying to pretend otherwise. And as an aside, when this article was written, there was not yet... there was a vote for UN resolution to the third year anniversary of the starting of this full-scale invasion of Russia in Ukraine. And there was Ukrainian resolution condemning the aggression and, actually the same that was first adopted on March of 2022, and the United States sided with Russia in this reason, and they voted against it. They refused to call this invasion aggression of they proposed the alternative resolution, United States, alternative resolution, which was voted down. There was no wording about Russian aggression. There was it was not clear who invaded who and what is going on. It was like as if some natural disaster just happened, and there is no one to blame for that. And the most interesting thing that United States, who proposed this watered down resolution as an alternative to Ukraine resolution for condemning this aggression, they themselves abstained from voting for it. Ukraine also abstained. Ukrainian representative didn't vote against. He abstained. But United States, who was proposing this resolution, they also abstained, which is quite bizarre to me. Okay, now about German elections. Did Merz declare independence? At least Putin and Trump did not bring Germany into their camp after last night's vote. The alternative for Deutschland did better than it ever has, but CDU-CSU was still the clear winner and should be able to work out a stable coalition government to take Germany into the next few years. Okay, there are 5 parties in the parliament, and the Social Democratic Party, the party of current Chancellor Scholz, and the CDU-CSU with Friedrich Merz as a leader, they can form a coalition government between these two parties if they come to agreement, because they need. There are total 630 seats in the parliament, and they need how many? 315 seats, more than 316 seats to have 50% plus one vote. Right now they have 329, so they have enough votes to form coalition between just these two parties without accepting to coalition Greens, the Greens. Okay, alternative for Germany have only 150 seats in the, and it is not enough for anything. The really notable thing was not just the CDU victory, but what Friedrich Merz, the leader of the CDU, said after the vote had ended and his victory was apparent. He pronounced a eulogy of sorts over the North Atlantic Alliance and spoke of the need for Europe to look out for its own security, the need for European independence from the USA, and even whether NATO would survive through this summer. Here is a selection of what he said. I am communicating closer with a lot of prime ministers and heads of European Union states, and for me it is an absolute priority to strengthen Europe as quickly as possible so that we achieve independence from the US step by step. I never thought that I would ever need to say something like that on television, but after the latest statement made by Donald Trump last week, it is clear that the Americans, at any case these Americans, this administration, mostly don't care about the fate of Europe one way or another. Merz also asked whether Europeans this summer would still be talking about NATO in its current form, or whether we will have to establish an independent European defense capability much more quickly. Even more striking, he spoke about Europe being stuck between the USA and Russia, as if he understands that the mafia states are preparing to gang up on Europe. We are under such massive pressure from two sides that my absolute priority now really is to create unity in Europe. Now, so far these are just words. However, Merz certainly used some striking ones that show the direction of travel of his thinking. And remember, in 2024 he talked about sending Ukraine Taurus missiles if he won the election. I think that he walked back somehow a little bit this statement. He said that he has to consult with other UN members, but it was before all this debacle with Trump and Waltz and Secretary of Defense of United States, all the bullshit that they were saying to Europeans. The next few days should tell us a great deal, as there really is no time to waste. If Merz wants to lead Europe to start looking after itself without the USA and to keep Ukraine in the fight, he will have to jump in with gusto to keep the big four, Germany, Poland, France and the UK, aligned while assuring that front-line states, Nordic, Baltics, Czechs and Romania, that he is with them. If he does that, his election will end up being the most important political result in Europe since 1945. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Till next time, and Slava Ukraini!